In the last 10 minutes in the last half hour, watch plane veers off runway after landing and drapes off side of cliff. In the last hour, plane careers down cliff face after skidding off runway. Plane plunges over cliff after sliding off runway. Plane skids off Turkish runway, stopping feet from plunging into Black Sea. In the last 2 hours, Turkish plane skids off runway onto seaside cliff. Video: plane skids off runway, dangles off cliff. Plane in Turkey skids off runway and dangles over cliff. Plane dangles over sea after skidding off runway. Plane skids off Trabzon runway, plunges down cliff to water's edge. Plane skids off cliff next to Turkey runway. Video: Turkish plane takes nosedive off cliff. Plane dangles off cliff in Trabzon, Turkey. In the last 4 hours, plane in Turkey skids off runway, teetering on water's edge. Inside plane that teetered on cliff. Passenger plane left stuck on cliff edge after skidding off runway. Passengers escape horrific plane crash in Turkey. Plane skids off tarmac and dangles off a cliff in Turkey. Turkish passenger plane skids off runway, teeters on cliff's edge. Turkish passenger plane skids off runway on Black Sea coast. Plane skids off runway in northern Turkey. Media: plane skids off runway, dangles off cliff. Passenger plane skids off airport runway, dangles off cliff edge. Disaster averted for 162 people as plane misses plunge into Black Sea. Turkish plane balances on cliff edge after skidding off runway. Turkish passenger plane skids off runway meters away from Black Sea coast. In the last 6 hours, plane dangles off cliff after skidding off runway in Turkey. Plane nearly falls into sea after skidding off runway. Passenger plane skids off runway in Turkey. Turkey plane skids off runway on Black Sea coast in Turkey. Terrifying pictures show plane hanging over cliff after skidding off runway. Plane skids off runway, gets stuck on cliff. Plane skids off runway in Turkey. Stuck in mud, panic as jet skids off Turkish runway. Passenger plane skids off runway and gets stuck dangling off cliff edge. Plane skids off runway at Trabzon airport in Turkey. Terrifying images show plane which skidded off runway on cliff edge. In the last 8 hours, plane skids off runway in Turkey. Turkish passenger plane goes off runway meters away from sea. Passenger plane skids off runway and gets stuck on cliff edge in Turkey. Video: passenger plane stuck on cliff in Turkey. It stopped where plane skids off cliff edge. Video: passenger jet almost crashes into sea after skidding on icy runway. Earlier today, Turkey plane overruns runway. Plane skids off runway in northern Turkey. Yesterday, airliner overshoots runway in Turkey's Trabzon airport.